Manchester United have drawn with Fulham 1-1 at Craven Cottage, making this the first time Manchester United have failed to beat Fulham at Craven Cottage in 15 years. In today's tactical analysis, we're going to look at Ruben Amorim deployed the same tactical system that he used against Arsenal, the fluid front three system with Cunha, Mbeumo and Mason Mount. We are also going to talk about the three things that a lot of Man United fans have said is the reason why Man United did not win the match. One, the manager's team selections and the manager's in-game management, i.e. his substitutions. Also, we'll look at this system once again and find out why it didn't really work against Fulham. And also, we will look at the individual errors, especially the ones made by Bruno and the ones made by Dalot that led to Fulham's goal. And also, I have to say, while there are parts of the game that we can tactically analyse, we can analyse why we didn't score, why the fluid front three didn't work against Fulham, but it worked much better against Arsenal. Fundamentally, we also have to acknowledge that in the first 10 to 15 minutes of the game, we were all over Fulham. And if our players had their shooting boots on, if Bruno scored a penalty, if Cunha had scored that chance where he hit the post, then the game would have been fundamentally a lot different. The first thing I think we should do is establish the system that we operated in. Talk about why it worked, maybe for the first 10 to 15 minutes, and also why it really didn't work afterwards. Why was it easy for Fulham to play against us eventually? Yes, we started well, but eventually Fulham understood our system and they worked their way around it. Now, as you know, we play a fluid system. Cunha, Mount and Mbeumo often interchange and often fall back with Bruno, with Casemiro to increase the numbers in the midfield, to overload that area of the park and dominate that area. As you can see, that is one thing that we do well. Fall back into a lower position, overload the area with the 10s, condense the space as we are seeing here. Number 10s will often fall back and condense the space and overload with numbers. That is a tactic we've seen in pre-season. It's a tactic that the manager will continue to use. The positives, the good thing about using 10s, especially playing with 3 10s, is the ability for the 10s to fall back in this position, as you can see, overload this area and dominate. This is what we did very well against Arsenal. Against Arsenal, midfield 3, we dominated. We ended up with 62% possession against Arsenal because of this. Squeeze in, overload the middle, get Arsenal to squeeze in also, and then create space down the wings to operate, pushing Arsenal back and utilising the space. The negatives, as we've discussed before, with 310s is that there isn't really a target man. There isn't really a main striker to deal with. So how did this system differ against Fulham? What was different against Fulham that wasn't really there against Arsenal? First and foremost, Fulham's line wasn't that high. Fulham's defensive line was quite deep, which means rather than getting a condensed midfield, an overload in midfield, as you can see on screen, with the Arsenal backline pushing up as they like to do. They like to play in a halfway line, which means our midfield is condensed and it will naturally overload because Arsenal have condensed the pitch. Because Fulham play with a deeper line, as you can see on screen, it means our 10s, our forward players, are further away from the midfield. The midfield isn't condensed. We cannot overload that area of the park. That was one of the key differences against Fulham. Our game was more expansive, which means our 10s were more spread out, which means we couldn't overload the middle of the park with numbers. We couldn't play through the middle as we wanted to. One good thing that happened as a result of Fulham playing a deeper line, as a result of our 10s playing more expansive, is that we won the ball. The first 10-15 minutes, we won the ball quite high. Mount and Mbeumo, the likes of Casemiro and the likes of Bruno would press and would win the ball really, really high. That's a reason why we created 2 or 3 really good opportunities in the first 10 to 15 minutes against Fulham because of this system, the more expansive system. Now, as you can see from this screenshot, within the second minute of the game, I think this highlights my point perfectly. The backline is disjointed. It isn't as high as Fulham would like it to be. In fact, like I said, it's quite disjointed. But what you're about to see is Bruno in this position, about to win the ball back really high up, and Man United counter-attack. Bruno intercepts the ball, reads the pass, wins the ball high. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players about to break against 4 defenders. This is the system, as I've described, working. The expansive system working, where we can win the ball back high and counter-attack very quickly. Another example. This is a Casemiro this time. The ball's about to go into the Fulham player. Casemiro is tight. We play one-on-one marking. That's what the manager likes to do. And Casemiro is about to win the ball back, as you can see, and get us on the counter-attack. So as you can see from those screenshots, it shows that, yes, Fulham played with a deeper line than Arsenal. It means that our 10s had to push up. This was a good thing in terms of winning the ball back high, but it was a bad thing in terms of playing down the middle, playing through the middle. Eventually, what happened, especially towards the end of the game, is Fulham understood this and they added more players into the middle of the pitch to overload us. What eventually happened, guys, is that Fulham's players started doing this. They started overloading this area towards the end of the game. Therefore, we were finding it hard to have control, finding it hard to play through the middle, and fundamentally, we lost control of the game. One thing I want to highlight, people, is that unlike Arsenal, in this system, I actually think Cunha was actually playing more as a striker. It was, yes, a fluid system where the front 3 interchanged, but Cunha was further forward. And because of that, Cunha actually had more chances to score than he did before because he was playing further forward. I still believe we still need a striker to occupy the striker roles, the striker positions. I still believe with a Sesko, we will be better. But the question, therefore, is this. If Benjamin Sesko, who is not a 10, starts playing and we lose somebody who can drop into the middle here, because Sesko's not going to do this like Cunha does. We lose the ability to add another player in here to do the overloads because Sesko is probably not going to do what Cunha does. Can we, as a football club, continue playing with a 2-man midfield? Yes. Mount, Bruno, the right 10 and the left 10 will form the box midfield and essentially make it a 4-man midfield. But that doesn't always happen. And with Sesko playing, Man United playing a main striker, will that take away from any overloads we need in the middle of the park? That is a question, people. So as well as there being perhaps systemic issues with the way that we play that the manager needs to get his head around, how are we going to deal with the overloads in midfield when we play a 2? Is that the reason why you're playing a fluid 3? Is that the reason why you're playing so many 10s? We play with a lot of number 10s. So yes, there is a potential formation and system issue. But today there were also individual errors that were made that led to Fulham's goal. And today we will take a look at them now. First of all, you can argue that the manager should not have taken Amad Diallo off the field if he wants to score a goal. Taking off Amad and putting on a more defensive player when you're trying to score a goal doesn't seem the most productive. In fact, it seems counterproductive. And I will go a step further. The manager put on Heaven, Maguire, Dalot and Ugarte. He put on 4 defensive-minded players when we're trying to score a goal. That to me sounds counterproductive, and I would encourage our manager to really think positively and to try to approach games in a positive way. So The change of Ahmad for Dalot was a very interesting change. And that change led to an error, a mistake from Dalot. I think I understand why you'd want a right-footed wing-back playing who potentially should be putting in crosses for Sesko. I kind of understand that to a certain extent because Ahmad is left-footed and he wants to cut in and shoot. But we didn't get crosses from Dalot at all. And I would argue that Ahmad is just as good defensively as Dalot is. As you can see from this picture, this is the start of the counter-attacking move that led to Fulham's goal. I think we're in good shape here. Ideally, we never want to be in this scenario. Of course not. But there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are enough players in this screenshot to deal with the situation. You could argue that Ugarte has got this player here. Sure, potentially should have gone across and just close him down. Leave Ugarte with this player. Leave Dalot to continue making his run. Sure, he's got a head start. He could come across here. He chooses not to. He chooses to leave Dalot to make up this space. I think that's a mistake. But either way, we deal with the issue. We deal with the problem. Dogu clears the ball to Dalot. What Dalot does next is absolutely insane. He's not aware of what's behind him. He doesn't really have, in my opinion, the technical ability to be doing this sort of skill anyway. But he tries a little skill here. He loses the ball, as you can see. And Fulham, of course, go on to score. So that's Dalot's mistake. Dalot, who's been brought on for Amad Diallo. But there's another error that's about to happen in the same move. And that is by our captain, Bruno Fernandes. As you can see in this screenshot, Bruno is here. This is Bruno's man, Emil Smith-Rowe. The issue with Bruno is that he's not a defensive-minded player. He's playing in a position where he has to be. He's playing in a position where you have to naturally think about players making run beyond you and players making runs behind you. That's not how he thinks. He's an attacking player. He prefers to play football with no responsibilities apart from appearing anywhere he wants to appear, playing anywhere he wants to play. He wants to roam, Bruno. He wants to be a number 10. But here you can see Emil Smith-Rowe behind him. Here you can see Emil Smith-Rowe almost beside him. That's his man. Bruno can see Emil Smith-Rowe now. Emil Smith-Rowe is in his eyesight. It's in his vision. But as you can see, as the move unfolds, Emil Smith-Rowe runs inside of Bruno. Bruno can see Emil Smith-Rowe. Emil Smith-Rowe is right here. Bruno is right there. There is no reason for Bruno not to track this run as any other midfielder in his position would do. Bruno leaves Emil Smith-Rowe, leaves him, let him waltz into the box and score a goal. Bruno's also the one who gave away the corner for Arsenal's goal. Bruno is also the one that gave away the ball for Tottenham's goal in the Europa League. This is a big issue for Amorim now. It's a big issue for Amorim. What does he do with Bruno Fernandes, people? Bruno is not a double pivot player. He's not a DM. He's also clearly been pushed out of the 10 positions for the likes of Cunha and Mbumo. So where does he play? Because in my opinion, he's not a natural 10. While the 10 position is his best position because it's a position that doesn't require too much defending. He can float around and pop up anywhere he wants, which is his game. Not a lot of defensive responsibilities. That's his favoured position, but I would argue he's not a natural 10. He can't dribble with the ball. He doesn't have that close control. He can't play between the lines and he can't play with his back to goal. So the manager has a Bruno Fernandes problem. He feels like he has to play him. And this is having an effect on the likes of Kobbie and other players in the team. Is there favouritism starting to form with the way the manager picks the team and decides the players, the formation? I think Amorim needs to be very careful going forward. There are a lot of fans now who are calling for Amorim to leave the club again. I am very nervous about this system, about this formation, about playing 2 midfielders in the Premier League. Teams often play with 3 midfielders. So you're mostly going to be outnumbered in this league. Will this system actually work in this league, people? We've spoken about the system working and also not working against Fulham, how the fluid front 3 is good at times, but it's also an issue. We've spoken about the individual errors that led to Fulham's goal, and we've also spoken about Man United not scoring, Man United not finishing their chances. Essentially the individual errors that led to us missing our opportunities. So while I believe the manager has a lot of blame, his starting lineup, the substitutions he made bringing on defensive-minded players, and his overall thinking and mindset, I think those things did not help Manchester United today. I think today's draw was partly to do with the manager and also partly to do with the players. I want to be clear and say that we still have seen positives. I want to be objective and say that we played well for the first 15 minutes. We pressed, we were hungry, we had about 2 or 3 chances to score. If Bruno Fernandes scores a penalty, the game would have been different. However, we also must understand that the manager, in my humble opinion, has a part to play. The manager needs to find a way of playing. He needs to fix this midfield issue. If Manchester United are not going to get this all-action midfielder that Amorim wants, he needs to find a way to play. He needs to find a way to incorporate a striker into a system that often, with 2 in midfield, we are overloaded. He needs to find the right balance. I want an honorary mention for Cunha. I think Cunha had a really good game today as well as he had a good game against Arsenal. I think Bruno stood out for me as somebody who didn't have the greatest game, and I think a lot of United fans are going to ask the question of why didn't we take the money from Saudi in order to reinvest into the squad and get a midfielder that actually fits into this system. I think Lenny Euro was also the man of the match for me today. And even though Sesko only came on for about 35-40 minutes, I think he showed enough ball control. He brought others into play. He made runs. I think we need to start with Sesko. Even if he's not fit, I believe the best way to be fit, the best way to catch up with the pace is to start games and to play games. All in all, Ruben Amorim has a midfield issue. He has a Bruno Fernandes issue that he must deal with very quickly, guys. Let me know what you thought of the game. Let me know your comments. Let me know what you thought of my tactical analysis. If you guys saw something else in the game, let me know. I haven't broken down everything. I haven't spoken about everything. I've just highlighted just a few things for your attention, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Comment below, let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you guys next time for another tactical breakdown.